No. Sweetie, you can't sit on me right now. I'm working. I'm sorry, baby. Hello, friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I thought it would be fun to take you through my entire Epipremnum collection, or Pothos. I know they're not technically Pothos plants, but I've always called them Pothos plants, and so it's just how it's gonna be. If you look up Pothos plants, you're gonna find these. So that's what we're going off of. But Epipremnum is probably one of my all-time favorite genera, and that's because they are so freaking easy compared to a lot of other plants. With most of these Epipremnum plants, I am able to just set them down in my collection and not worry about them too much. They tend to be fairly easygoing, like low maintenance plants, which is great for every plant lover. Hey Cleo, you've got to go. If you are new here and you don't know me already, my name is Emma and I make houseplanting content all over the internet, so if you want to follow along with my houseplanting journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. Right, let's get into these Epipremnums. So these are in no particular order. I'm just gonna go through them. However, there are some that are a lot more common and some that are more on the uncommon side, ones you wouldn't find in just every plant shop. So without further ado, oh, where should I start? I'm gonna start big, just to kind of get it out of the way. This beautiful thing right here is a Manjula Pothos, aka Epipremnum Aureum. It is a variegated type of Epipremnum Aureum. I don't know if the different types of like Epipremnum Aureum have different botanical names, but this one is most commonly referred to as the Manjula Pothos. I think sometimes the happy leaf pothos as well, and it is grown so well for me. I think this was one of the first ones I actually put on a pole. Definitely the first Aureum that I put on a pole, and it is just been loving life. Like, look at all those roots back there. Look at all of them. Those are gorgeous. It is like absolutely loving the pole life, and you can see that the leaves are getting like quite large as well. There's some smaller ones down here, but since it's been on the pole, it's just been increasing and increasing in size, which is brilliant. I know this plant has decent genes because there are some massive leaves down at the bottom, but I just really love this one. It's got a great mixture of sort of marbly variegation in the leaves here, as well as chunky variegation. I like the combination of that because it's neither one nor the other, and it just creates a nice bit of texture in my home. This one is currently living in an area of my bedroom that doesn't get much direct sunlight, but it does get grow light for about 12 hours a day at the minute. And it's in there because these can handle quite low humidity compared to a lot of my other tropical plants, which require something like 50–60% plus. In the area it's in, ideally we try and keep the humidity around 50% because we were having issues with mold in our home. So if we keep it lower, that's better. But it sits like right next to cacti and it's getting quite high light. I think that's why it's starting to pop out these really bright leaves here. So I think it's happy where it is, and it is definitely not complaining. You can see that I do have a cup of water on here that is watering the moss pole. I try and keep these watered. Ideally, I'm trying to be better about it this year, but ideally I will give them water every 2 or 3 days when they start to look a bit drier. This one is still pretty damp, so I don't think it necessarily needed more water, but I've given it, so it's not going to complain. But I pretty much only water through the pole, and the soil will slowly get water through that as well. So I don't tend to like water the soil that much of this plant. But it is absolutely lovely. I am so glad that I added this to my collection. I think last year it is Definitely not one of my favorites. I feel like all of these are my favorites because Epipremnums are my favorites. So it's definitely one of like the easiest go-to, like sort of splashy. It kind of gives like variegated monstera vibes because the leaves are really heart-shaped. So if you want a variegated monstera without all of the hassle and it's stable and you won't get the splits, maybe you will when it gets like really big, but this is a good alternative, like a sort of dupe for that. If you're just into the monstera alba for the color, this is probably a better option. So yeah, I absolutely love this plant and I can't wait to see how it continues to grow. A similar one to that is this one. This is actually, I think, my newest Epipremnum. Again, an Epipremnum Aureum, but this one is a Pearls and Jade, which is similar-ish in variegation. It does have the blocks and the marbling, but the leaves on this are a lot smaller. They won't grow quite as big. I would tend to grow this one more as a trailing one. I don't think I've ever seen a Pearls and Jade climbing before, but I just have a couple of these cuttings sitting in some moss here inside of my cuppy prop box where I've got a bunch of cups full of moss, and it gets quite a lot of humidity in there. You can see it is a little bit wet. Maybe you can't, if only it would focus. You can see it is a little bit wet. Maybe you need, again, you still probably can't. So yeah, I'm really excited for this one because I've never had a Pearls and Jade. For a long time I was really confused between the difference between a Pearls and Jade and a Pothos N Joy because I think they're commonly mislabeled one or the other. But let me bring down my Pothos N Joy. I've got it sitting up here quickly, and we can look at the difference between them. So this is one of my oldest Pothos, the N Joy Epipremnum Aureum, and it does have fairly similar leaf shape and size and like kind of similar coloring as well. So with the N Joy, it doesn't really have any marbling in the white or at all. It is all pretty solid blocks of color, whereas the Pearls and Jade has the marbling in kind of both the green solid parts and the white parts. Sorry, my hand's a bit shaky. But otherwise, I think they're fairly similar, and I would hope that I can grow this one out in a similar pattern to this one. Like I said, this is one of my oldest Pothoses. I'm pretty sure I gave away a Pothos N Joy cutting in my first giveaway when I got to like 1,000 followers on Instagram. That and like normal satin Pothos. Gosh, how the time flies. That was so long ago now. I think nearly 4 years, which is pretty crazy. So I've had this one for a very, very long time, and I have chopped and propped it tons and tons and tons. I currently have it living in my bedroom above my bed. It gets a little bit of grow light, but I wouldn't really bank on that, like giving it much. For the most part, it just gets ambient light from the room, which isn't tons because I live in the UK and it's almost always cloudy. But it still seems to be thriving. I do have a tiny bit of leaf loss here. It looks a tiny bit disjointed, but I'm not mad about it. One thing about the Pothos N Joy that I've noticed is that they have very kind of curly stems. They curl back on themselves a lot. They're not smooth like some of the other Pothos types. They're bendy and they kind of grow every which way, which I think is a bit of fun. And their internodal space is quite tight in there. It is a lot tighter when you have higher light, obviously, because the plant is getting more light and it can grow slightly less leggy. But like I said, I've never ever seen a Pothos like this on a pole. I personally don't think I would put this one on a pole. I don't know if it can get that much bigger leaves. Like even the big leaves on this one are quite small. And I also like having the small leaves and like the sort of bushy aspect. Oh, just look at that. It just gives like such a lovely pop of like pizzazz to the room that it's in, and I love it and I literally ignore it. And another thing that's great about Epipremnums is in general, you can tell that they're thirsty because they'll start to wilt, and of course you don't want to let it get too far and you don't want to let them wilt too often. Ideally you would water before they wilt, but they're not going to be mad if you leave them to wilt down when they are thirsty. You'll be able to feel the difference in texture on them. They'll feel a lot less rigid, and I don't know, it's something, it's hard to explain, but you can really tell by the feel of them whether or not they're watered. This one is nicely watered, so it's all good, but that's how I figure out when I need to water most of my Epipremnums. I go off of their like leaf wiltiness rather than moisture meter, which might not be the best thing to do, but it's what I do, and they all seem to be perfectly happy for the most part. I'll show you some later in this video that I can't bring here. I'll bring you to them. Some of those aren't the happiest, but we can talk about that later. A very different sort of Epipremnum. This is now an Epipremnum Pinnatum type Epipremnum, but it is a skeleton key, and honestly it is not growing the best right now. I have struggled with it a little bit. I think I need to be a lot better about keeping the pole moist. That is a me problem, but it is an Epipremnum skeleton key, which I got as an import ages ago, and I am obsessed with these sort of leaf shapes. When it's young, it will grow more like normal Pinnatum leaves. I did have another one before that I got very young that I thought was just a Pinnatum. I ended up giving it to Claire, which it is now potentially growing more skeleton key leaves, so maybe I'll get a cutting from her when it gets a little bit bigger, but the leaves are keyed on this one already, which makes me feel a lot more confident with it. And the only way the leaves will key on this plant is if it has support. So if you just have one of these trailing, it's not going to have these gorgeous skeleton key shaped leaves, and it becomes kind of, in my opinion, a little bit boring. That's just personal preference. I think the plain green Pinnatum isn't the most exciting thing. Hopefully, if I start treating this one a little bit better, I can keep it going up the pole, keep the pole a little bit moist. This pole's very, very dry right now. My bad. But if I can keep the pole a bit more moist and happy, I can probably get it to key again and have these beautiful, crazy leaf shapes, which I love, and that's like the whole point of this plant, is the fun leaf shapes. So if you can't have those, there's no point in having it. This here is what I was talking about, just a plain old, ooh, spilling water on myself, Epipremnum Pinnatum. And this one I did used to have potted up, but I was having quite a lot of issues with it. It had spider mites, I think it might have had scale at one point as well. It was a complicated thing. It is now healthy again, but I did end up chopping and propping. This is not my favorite Epipremnum. It's got like really lovely waxy dark green leaves, which are nice and they do provide something special, but I feel like I have several other plants that have waxy green leaves that I can appreciate more than this one, which I know is bad. Maybe I will end up getting rid of this one. Oh, I keep spilling water all over myself. Maybe I will end up getting rid of this one at some point, bring it to the swap or something, because I don't know, there's very leaf-shaped leaves, and when I have a plant that's plain green, typically I prefer it to have something else going for it, whether that's like the funky leaves of the skeleton key or like huge leaves of the bird of paradise or my philodendron fat boy not fat boy. This, it just doesn't do it for me in the same way, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's fine. I just have it in some water and I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. It's just gonna sit like this for potentially ever until I get rid of it. So because I wasn't fully feeling my Epipremnum Pinnatum plain green form, I decided to get the variegated version to see if that would spice up my love for Epipremnums a little bit more. This one is just two actually quite small cuttings in a pot, and it's got okay variegation. To be honest, it isn't my favorite sort of variegation. It kind of wrinkles the leaves in a way that makes me, I don't know, it doesn't look sick or unwell. Like, I know this is a healthy plant, but when it alters the leaf shape like that, something about it irks me, and so it's also not my favorite. I also find that these ones grow quite slowly. I've had this one for ages, and maybe it's because I'm not putting it in the right conditions, but I've had it for ages and it's not really done all that much for me, unfortunately. It's fine. I was hoping that it would like spur me into my Epipremnum pinnatums more, but it's not my favorite. Maybe if I got it on a pole and I enabled it to grow up and potentially mature in leaf size, because these ones can grow splits in their leaves, which I think would make it slightly cooler. If I could get this one to grow up like that, that'd be great, but in my home I'm not sure I have the space for that at the minute. Maybe it's the case that Epipremnum pinnatums do better on poles and Aureums can go either way, if that makes sense. I don't think I've ever seen like a big bushy trailing basket of variegated Epipremnum pinnatum, whereas I have seen similar of Epipremnum aureum, but also I've seen climbing ones as well. And so I think that might be a big difference between them. And also Epipremnum pinnatums have more of this leaf-shaped leaf, and typically the Aureums tend to be a bit more heart-shaped and like wide than long, like these are long. So this is a thought. I don't know how much I'm feeling this plant, and maybe if I don't know, it means I should probably get rid of it, but I don't know. I might see where it continues taking me, or put it on like a lazy pole or something and see if I can get that to make it grow faster or something like that. Going back to the Epipremnum aureum side, I have this gorgeous Snow Queen Pothos, which I think technically might just be a very high variegated marble queen, a marble queen with like super variegated genetics. Like this leaf down here looks more like what you'd see on a marble queen, but these up here almost all white, no sort of chunks of green or anything. It is just absolutely stunning. It does require quite a bit more light than I'd say a typical Epipremnum aureum does, or like a normal marble queen, because it does have so little pigmentation in its leaves, and the pigmentation, the green bits, are where the chlorophyll lives, and the chlorophyll helps photosynthesize, so it does require quite a bit more light, and it will grow slower. That being said, it still has the great properties of being a fairly set and forget plant. I have mine in a bit more of a prominent location to remind me to keep this one happy. It lives like right underneath my TV, normally like right there. You probably see it in the background of several of my videos, and it being in that prominent location kind of helps me make sure that it stays watered and nice. I can see a lot more often if it is looking unhappy. Also, you should be aware that the white bits can go brown just because it is a bit more of a sensitive plant. It props like a normal Epipremnum aureum though, so I have been able to chop and prop this one and give some cuttings to friends, and since I have done chops, it has started new growth points with, again, like super variegated bits of leaves. So it is a very happy plant, and I am very happy to have it within my collection. It makes me really happy, and I love looking at this one every day. That's why it's in such an important spot in my home. This one, okay. I had never heard of this type of Epipremnum before. This one I got as an import, ages and ages ago, sometime in the summer of last year. It is an Epipremnum Kujang, and I'll put a picture in of what shows up when you like search it on Instagram, because they do look like really, really, really gorgeous plants. When I got it, it was a huge long vine with lots of leaves that had these super stunning splits, if I can get it to focus. Super stunning splits. And because it didn't have the most amazing root system then I had to chop and prop it all, kind of use it as wet sticks. This was the top cutting, I believe, that I tried to put on a pole to see if I could get going, and I think it is definitely sizing up. You can see here to here is quite a large jump in leaf size. So I'm hoping if I can continue it up this moss pole, which again is very dry, I need to be better about this one as well, I can hopefully get it to split again, which is lovely. Also, it's got like these super duper tiny holes. I don't know how well you can see them. Like these tiny little holes in the middle, and I know that's not pests or anything, that's just how the leaf comes in, which is really cool. So it is quite a fun one, something that I don't think many people have, at least in the like sort of UK or Europe sphere. I've only ever seen this like in my import. I've never ever seen it anywhere else. So I am enjoying chopping and propping this one. I did chop off the top because it got to the top of the moss pole, and I think I gave that to a friend to propagate, but it is a really cool plant. I did have tons and tons and tons of wet sticks of it, and so these are a couple of the wet sticks that have grown out. They do have like a bit more of texture in the leaf, and so far these ones have not yet started splitting. I might end up putting these on that moss pole as well and trying to make it a bit more of a bushy moss pole, but I just wanted to get them into soil first after propagating. It isn't the most exciting for me at this stage in plantdom, but because it doesn't really exist in the UK otherwise, really, as far as I know, it excites me, and trying to get it to get to its more mature form gives me a sort of project, which I quite like. So we're gonna keep this one and see how well it grows. Another one that probably not that many of you have seen or heard of. I hadn't heard of this type of pothos or Epipremnum until last year. It is an Epipremnum Amplissimum, and this one is the silver stripe. So it's not a Pinnatum or an Aureum, which are the most common types. It is an Amplissimum, and they are known for these super long, almost like Aglaonema or Dracaena sort of leaves. Very long and skinny, and basically when I saw this plant on House of Kojo for the first time, there was absolutely no way I wasn't gonna get it, because it is just like the blue and silver stripes it has, they just keep me happy. And honestly, this one has been growing very well. It did recently lose several leaves from the bottom. I underwatered it at Christmas, and so it lost several leaves at the bottom, but I don't really mind. As long as the top is still staying full, I can't really complain. I probably will have to chop and prop fairly soon because it's quite at the top of the pole, and maybe I can add those cuttings in at the bottom and keep it going like that. But this one also lives underneath a grow light for 12 hours a day, and I think that has benefited it. It has allowed these leaves to get proper big. I don't know if Amplissimum leaves split when they get mature. That's something I'm not aware of, but I just think this is such a cool plant and so unlike any of the other Epipremnums I've ever had. So it thrilled me, and so I got it. I know there is also like a plain green form of the Amplissimum, so if you like this shape but not this color, you can get a plain green form. And I'm pretty sure at one point Claire got an import of a variegated version of the green one.
Look at that.
Which was pretty cool. Unfortunately, I don't think it lived, as far as I know. I could be wrong. I'll check with her and put it here if it didn't, or if it did. So there are other types, but not that many compared to the like massive variety of Pinnatums and Aureums that I know of. So yeah, I love this one, and it's so pretty. So I only have two more to show you here before I bring you into my bedroom to show the ones in there. This one is, again, one of my newer Epipremnums, and probably my weirdest. It is an Epipremnum Shangri-La, and it has the most oddly textured leaves that just like sit like this in this like weird crinkly wrinkly state. That's just like they're normal, and like there's no pests on this. This is a perfectly healthy, happy plant, but it just has these like odd curly leaves, which typically I don't think would pique my fancy, but because it's an Epipremnum and so low maintenance, I am perfectly happy with this existing because I know it doesn't have pests, and in general it's just a really cool plant. Also, I should say in general, most, if not all of my Epipremnums, knock on wood, I'm pretty sure have not been pest magnets. I don't think many of them have been massive sufferers of thrips, which is one of my main, or was one of my main pests that I had. I'm a lot better about it now, and I'm pretty sure, knock on wood again, they're gone. But in general, my Epipremnums tend to be fairly pest-free, or entirely pest-free. So it's just a funky one that, it's just so curious. Like, why is the leaf texture like that? And like, they're all curled up. I don't understand it, and I think that's why I like it. This is also the only Epipremnum that I have in semi-hydro. I keep all of my Epipremnums in soil, I guess, because they are fairly happy with that. Never had any problems with that, and don't need water as much as some other things like Alocasia or Maranta that I have that I want to keep moist all the time. I don't feel like these plants like that as much. You could probably keep them in semi-hydro and just let them dry out a little bit more, but that's just not where I'm coming from. So this is the only one that's in semi-hydro, and it's in semi-hydro because I got it in semi-hydro. So it has only lived in this jar in my care and seems pretty happy about it. You can see some roots in there, which is nice. And it has, I think, recently put out this leaf, so it is growing. It's just taking a little bit more time because it is so small. And then last, before we move to the big ones, I wanted to show you my probably all-time favorite sort of Epipremnum. So these here are Epipremnum Pinnatum Cebu Blue, which for the longest time was almost impossible to find in the UK. I think the original Cebu Blue I got, which might have been this one a few years back. Oh my god, I bought a cutting, or like 2 or 3 cuttings, for £15 each. So I think I spent like £45 on 3 cuttings of an Epipremnum, which is like one of the freaking fastest growing and easiest to propagate plants. So it was like such a pain. I probably should have just been patient because I later ended up getting some for my friend who was moving away, which I didn't even need to pay for. So I should have just waited. But at the same time, I'm not mad about it because this is one of my absolute favorite types of Epipremnum. And I think it's just because I love these bluey, silvery leaves. These ones, when you grow them up a pole, or like give it some support or something, they can grow quite large leaves with splits in them as well, which is super fun. So I think that is one of my goals for this one eventually, is to get it to grow splits. I think it's not had the best light for a while. It was kind of tucked behind a bunch of things on my sideboard over there. I have since rearranged, but it's behind a monstera now, so it's still not getting tons and tons of light. I don't know, I probably could put this in a slightly brighter position and it would probably give me slightly better growth, but at the same time, I'm not really worried about it. Sorry, I just thought I saw some pest damage, but I don't think it was. Yeah, we're all good. But this one I have in the climbing form. I also have tons and tons that I have chopped and propped and given to friends and given away and sold, etc. And several actually plants that I have trailing at the minute. I think my long-term goal with an Epipremnum, aside from getting one that has really big leaves and splits, is to have like a huge, really bushy basket of them. I know in like, I think it was 2020 time, in the States, you could buy like a huge basket from like Walmart of Cebu Blue for not that much money as well, which was awesome. So props to anyone who got their Cebu Blues then and there. But in the UK at that time, it was still like almost impossible to find one for cheap. And I just, ever since then, I've wanted a really big, beautiful, bushy basket. I do have 3, I think, pots of trailing pothos, and this one is growing quite long. Trailing Cebu Blue. And they are doing pretty well. Overall, this is probably one of my favorite plants of all time because it's an Epipremnum and I love my Epipremnums, and it's got the silvery blue leaves and it's so easy to grow and I just don't need to worry about them at all. And so I absolutely love them, and God, I think I would be quite sad if I didn't have several Epipremnum Cebu Blues dotted throughout my house. Oh, anyways, let us go on a wee bit of a tour of my big Epipremnums, aka the ones that I have in my bedroom. So this here is sort of all Epipremnums along these top beams. This one here is a synapsis, but from there over and all along that beam is currently Epipremnums, so let's have a look at what they are. This is the classic Devil's Ivy Epipremnum Aureum. This one is my absolute longest plant, I'm pretty sure, because it goes from the pot up there all the way along this beam, like 2/3 of the way, circles back, and gets almost all the way to the pot again. So it is a huge plant, and that is why it cannot be moved. I think these plants are just so easy. That's why they are staple. That's why they're in so many people's homes. That's why they are considered a beginner basic houseplant, because they are just so easy to deal with. Typically they have a sort of yellow variegation. I think this is one of the only leaves on mine that has variegation, but I don't really care about it. I'm not in them for the yellow variegation. I guess that's why they're called a golden pothos, because they do have that yellow variegation, but that is not why I love this plant. I just love the sort of jungle vibes that it lends to my room. Like, look at that. Who doesn't want pothos hanging from their ceiling? Anyone who says they don't is probably wrong, in my opinion. So this is one golden pothos, and then I have another one over here in the basket. This one has slightly more variegation. You get variegation up here, and this one just runs along the top as well. And it's not quite as long, but it is still bushy and beautiful and just a happy little plant. And then this one is kind of a bit sad at the minute. It is one that I do want to give another makeover to. It is my Marble Queen Pothos. It is one of the plants I've got at the very beginning of my plant career. It is a bit thirsty at the minute. You can see when I was talking about wrinkled leaves and like wilty ones, this is what I mean. Like, just the way it moves and feels, it just feels a lot more squishy and soft and limp compared to one that has been watered and is adequately watered. I did water this one before filming this video, so I'm not completely neglecting this plant, but at the same time, it isn't as happy as it could be. Also, I'm pretty sure this one lost a bit of variegation. This is the same plant here, but it kind of turned into a bit of a golden pothos, which is fine, but it's just another reason why I want to revamp this one. I know I did a whole video on that at some point, but I think I need to do it again because I've just not been giving this one the care it needs. It lost quite a few leaves. It's got several sort of runnery vines along here that just all of these leaves dropped off when I wasn't able to water it because I was sick and then I went away. So unfortunately, even though this is one of my favorite types of Epipremnum aureum, I am treating it probably the worst in my whole collection, which is a bit sad, but at the same time, it's okay, and I will give it the makeover it so desperately deserves at some point. So that is it. Those are all of my Epipremnum plants, my Pinnatums, my Aureums, my Amplissimums, all the good ones. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you have some Epipremnums to add to your wish list now. I would highly recommend all of these plants. All of them are really great easy care plants, and I would suggest them to pretty much any plant parent, and they're an absolute staple in my home. So yeah. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things or other collections you'd like me to show you. I have other collections. I will link them up in the clickable eye. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!